Thank you so much. Love to take this off and come sit with you. Woo! I'm coming here. All right, a big woohoo for Wendy. Louder, everybody, louder. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. This is a labor of love. I don't know why she does this to herself every year, but I'm so happy to be here. Okay, quickly, starting with you, Rebecca, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, nothing like ending the day talking about investments. Rebecca Carland, I am the Chief Investment Officer for Builders Vision. We are the family office and impact investing platform for Lucas Walton, who is the heir to the Walmart family. And we are, one of the things we really pay attention to in making investments into funds is their gender diversity, sort of at all levels. So excited to talk about that today.
David.
Hi, everyone. David Chiang. Really excited to be here. I am the founder and chief investment officer of a firm that I created called Idyllic Partners. Did this within the last couple of years. Before that, I was chief investment officer for several Pritzker families and their foundations. Before that, I worked for George Soros and his foundations and family office. I've been very lucky to work in the family office as well as institutional investment side of the world, and happy that over the years, I'll share more, but I've been able to back amazing minority, female-led firms, and I can go into why that's been an incredibly accretive, high return generating endeavor.
And Claude.
So first off, I want to start with another yoo-hoo for Wendy, who I met. Woo-hoo! Who I met when I was a magazine publisher like her. I had created a Trace magazine as a black culture publication focused on music, film, fashion, art. And I remember Animal Fair, we were very much also on the same beat. I actually ended up growing that company a lot. I got it funded by Goldman Sachs, and I sold it in 2010 and pretty much took 10 years off just to teach and pay it forward and angel invest. And 3 years ago, my longtime mentor, Dick Parsons, called me because he wanted to launch a venture capital firm called the Equity Alliance. And we invest in women and people of color exclusively because white men get more than 90% of the funding in VC, and we felt that we needed to deal with those inequities. So that's why I'm here.
And I'm Lauren Young. I'm a journalist at Reuters. You say Reuters, not Reuters. And we're the world's largest media organization, so you should pay attention. Okay, why should we invest in women? I will start with you, Rebecca. Why? What's the business case?
All right, so I would say there's just data to support.
I love data. Give me the data.
Study after study has shown us that investing in female investors just generates stronger returns. 69% of the top quartile venture funds have a woman in a leadership and decision-making role on the investment team. And that's pretty incredible when you pair that with the fact that 90+% of the GPs, the general partners making investments, are men. So this really shows you that having a woman at the table contributes to those returns. And I've sort of thought about why is that? I would say, there's also data that shows businesses backed by or founded by women deliver 2.5 times the return per dollar invested versus companies founded by men. That's pretty powerful. And you layer on top of that women tend to invest more in women. So having a female investor on or decision maker on the fund investment team doubles the likelihood that fund will invest in companies, portfolio companies founded by women. So it's sort of this cycle of women are supporting and investing in women. Women companies tend to outperform, and then funds with those female investors in the decision-making roles, therefore, tend to also outperform. Pretty powerful data. So as someone who's looking to generate returns, it's just pretty good odds.
Amazing. You can applaud.
Let's go.
All right. Claude, David, anything you want to add to that? Why should we invest in women?
I want to perhaps add a bit of a racial lens to the gender lens because, as I said earlier, Equity Alliance, we only invest in women and people of color. And I was discussing this last night when we were at the reception. There are certain statistics that are just so shocking that a lot of people just wouldn't believe them unless they actually saw the real raw data. For instance, we invest a lot in black women, who represent pretty much 7% of the US population, but they only get 0.1% of the venture funding. And this is in a situation where black women are the most educated demographic in America, yet they still can't get the funding to get started. And yet, we can get deeper into that, but I'll stop there. Maybe you wanted to add something.
I can add, so at the entrepreneurship level, we've seen the statistics and we know and live and breathe that there are more women who are running and starting companies, right? So then at the investment firm level, it only makes sense that there should be many more investment firms led by women, investing in women. And so let's look at the latest statistic. So last year, across venture capital and private equity firms, I believe I read roughly $3.5 billion was raised by women-led firms. Like, that's very, very good news. However, put that in the context of 100+ billion was raised in the industry. And so lots of progress, but a huge gap still, right? If you're roughly 3% of the industry, it doesn't seem to make sense that there's that much of a gap. Then I look back over 25 years, I've worked again for these amazing family offices and institutions. People like George Soros he cares about the world, obviously, but when he hires someone like me to do investments for him, he wants to make money. He does not have an ESG check boxes for anything except for do the right thing, make me a bunch of money, make the world a better place. Right?
David, just briefly define ESG because not everybody in the room might know.
ESG would be environmental, social governance. It would be a category that is defined.
It's a lens to identify companies and organizations that fit within that structure.
For impact investments, for sustainable investments. I think there's an opportunity. So even back when I was working with him, it was very much find me the best investments you can. And one of the things I noticed right away was this arbitrage, right? So there's a difference in the market opportunity was there's so many smart women that are not being backed, these investment firms, and I started leaning into earlier, newer funds, which many of them, as Claude and we all know, are led by women and minorities. And so I just started following where the money should be. And by doing that before many others, and now I'm glad others are joining, it has led to amazing returns for George, for us, and then the Pritzkers, et cetera.
Can I just double dip really quickly? I promise I'll be quick.
Very
the
fast.
Soros family is an investor in my fund, and I have to tell you, and I've known George for many years as well, but they're on my case when it comes to returns. They really want to make sure that you're going to deliver superior returns. And I like that because I don't want them to believe that just by investing in Latinos, black people, women, indigenous people, it's going to be concessionary. I want to be held to that standard so we can deliver top decile funds as well.
By the way, I love that, Claude. I think it's amazing and it's not surprising to me that women and minority-led firms do generate outperformance. On the other hand, I do think it's a little bit unfortunate that you have to, that's how the collective we feel about that, right? To me, it should be as simple as if it's actually equal, the same, and you throw a dart and it's the same, well then it should at least be fair to back a diverse group of investors, right? I think what's come into play, partly politically, partly socially, is, let's debate whether or not women and minorities actually are better investors. Are they better entrepreneurs? We know they are.
The debate is done.
Like, the
they
debate
are.
should be done.
Right. It's done. Rebecca, talk to me give me some examples of things that you've invested in that have been successful, that have been women-led or the genius of women. What you got for me?
Sure. Well, I think there's, I actually was asked by someone the other day, who do you think are some of the sharpest investors in your portfolio? And we have relationships with 30 plus, private investment fund managers. And the two that popped into my head without even, having a gender lens to the question, I thought of one of our investments is with Katie Ray in The Engine. She came out of MIT. And if you know Katie, she really helped put Boston on the map, I think, as a tech hub before founding the Engine. She is just a woman who helps other women, and she is investing in deep tech. I mean, fusion and hydrogen and sustainable aviation fuels and digitizing bio manufacturing, like really hard things that are coming out of the lab at MIT. And I just think, again, this is a woman who is driving innovation, and I have so much confidence in her and her ability as an investor and her ability to identify very strong leadership teams. So that's one example. And then one other I'll mention too, the other name that popped into my head was Kirsten Green at Forerunner. Again, I think she is sort of at the tip of the spear in terms of, and maybe it's being a woman, but just very forward thinking in terms of consumer brands and where consumers are going. So she's trying to stay ahead of the trend in terms of consumers. And again, you know, she's been on the Midas list for several years now. She's a top VC investor. You know, take away the gender lens, like she's up there, you know, in the rankings with all of the men. She's in a capacity constrained fund. And, you know, again, when asked that question, those were the two names that popped into my head. And, you know, they might be the only two funds in my portfolio that are sort of female founded and led. And I reflected on that and sort of what that meant. And I think it means I need to go out and find more female led funds for my portfolio.
What's the secret sauce to the women investments you have?
So no, I want to get to that, but I want to push back a little bit on what you said, because, you know, I went to MIT and I know how powerful that ecosystem is. And it could be just very easy for me as an MIT alum to just go and find the most promising founders on that campus in Kendall Square. But I think the challenge is to kind of diversify a little bit away from Silicon Valley, away from Kendall Square, away from Harvard. I've been teaching at Harvard since 2016. There's a lot of very, very, very gifted and hardworking people there. But I feel like so many people are excluded from the system because they're not in one of those environments. I mean, 60% of the successful startups that are founded in America were either incubated or part of the ecosystem of Harvard, MIT, or Stanford. And I think that that's so unfair. And so I think one of the things we have to do is kind of level the playing field by looking in geographies and tech hubs and tech environments that are not the same old engines, for lack of a better word, that we've seen. So in terms of us, I just want to maybe just quickly talk about a couple of investments. So turns out that my business partner, Adrienne Reese, used to work with Rebecca pretty closely as part of the Walton Enterprises. And so she's a woman, and when we're diligencing innovations in the medical space, we do a lot of investing in health tech. We made an investment in a company called Teal Health, which is a new device to detect cervical cancer. So I was thinking, it's great that Adrienne is on our team and has this experience as an investor, because imagine, what do I know about cervical cancer? What kind of credentials do I have as a male investor to be able to properly diligence something that is very much related to women's health? So I think the key is to really identify diverse teams so that we can have different skill sets and capabilities and life experiences that can allow us to kind of laser-like focus on identifying the most promising startups in all over America, actually.
David, of the things you've invested in, what are the standouts that are women-led?
One standout is a venture capital firm called Acrew Capital, founded by Teresa Gao and Lauren Kaladny. And they also have two amazing women. Teresa was one of the key people at Excel, which is a major venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. She's been on the Midas list at least 10 times. I lost track because she's on it.
I think like 15 times by now.
Exactly, probably. And I reflect on what makes them so good. Part of it is they have three other founding partners, multi-generational men as well. And I think part of their edge is they are a mentor, they're an example, they're open to and seeking a very diverse group of companies to back. But at the same time, it's not exclusionary by any means. And so I think that emphasis on diversity across race, gender, as well as age has given them an edge. So they just celebrated their 5-year anniversary. They've raised $1.7 billion. And so we're super excited to have backed them, and they've generated great returns as well.
Amazing.
And one thing they've
Go
done,
ahead.
sorry, just
no,
really
I love
quickly.
it. I love when Claude interrupts.
No, it's important to know that Teresa is investing her own capital into supporting emerging funds.
Yes.
So she is paying it forward with her own money, not her limited partners' money, but with her own money. And I think it's so important that women are leading in that way as well.
No, it's a perfect segue to my next question, which is part of the panel's description is how visionary leaders are breaking barriers, visionary leaders like you, but also people that you admire, how we're breaking barriers to uplift women entrepreneurs. Rebecca, what's the secret?
I mean, one, this is not rocket science, but just in my my day-to-day life is, sourcing fund managers and diligencing fund managers. And it's interesting when it comes to gender, if you ask investors, do you consider gender in your investment decision-making process? Over 60% of them say, yes, we do. If you ask the managers, do you find investors are asking you about gender when they're doing diligence on your fund? They report that less than 20% of investors are actually asking for that information and data. So there's this disconnect. So one of the things we do at Builders is it is built into our diligence process to, really dig into all these different metrics of diversity, not just gender, but other forms of diversity as well, and not only get that information, but really engage with the managers on that information. And in some cases, we have made improvement on some of those metrics a sort of condition of our making a commitment to their fund. And I think if more investors, the limited partners did that, even managers say, then we would pay attention, because the limited partners have the power to push that and to say we really care about that, and we will make our next commitment conditional on us seeing I can't speak right now. Improvement on those metrics, and I think that can be really powerful, and we've seen that. But there needs to be more of a coalition of investors doing that.
Great. Claude and David, you're allies. I don't think you're women. I'm not sure, but you said you're not because you didn't know about cervical cancer. Yeah. But I'm curious, what's the value of an ally, and how can everyone in this room be an ally? What tools do we need?
So I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And I think to the point of having diverse teams, I think when we look at these different companies, not everybody's good at evaluating every company. But I take it back to my own experience growing up. I came to the U.S. as a penniless immigrant. I'm from Togo in West Africa. And growing up in a very patriarchal society where pretty much men run everything, what I saw growing up, including with my mom, who was a hardworking, working class seamstress, is that a lot of the guys, because the men make all the decisions, as soon as they made money and the salary came, they went and spent the money, they went to the bar, they went to drink, they spent money on girlfriends, on mistresses or whatever, whereas the women were so much better at managing the money. And if you look at societies, not just in Africa, but Latin America, Asia, women are so much better at managing household decisions when it comes to financial literacy. However, they are not empowered to make those decisions. So I start with my own household in terms of my wife and how I want to make sure that we are equal partners in making those decisions. Same with our fund, the Equity Alliance. We are partners in making those investment decisions.
So I think the question of how can we help each other, a lot of it is telling the stories, because people don't necessarily, they feel like, right, that we've got this amazing day, we've got this amazing organization, and then we're like, check, we're done. But I think getting investment committees, getting people into great seats like yours, there are more women now that are chief investment officers of family offices and institutions, but there aren't enough. And just kind of not settling for that. And Claude, your story about family is, it makes me laugh because so my parents came here from China, Taiwan, the Chinese restaurant, immigrants, American dream. But my mom gets a PhD in molecular biology, works for different gene therapy startups. My dad's been trading stocks. Bear with me real quick. Now, my dad's been trading options for 15 years, reasonably successful, got 2 kids through college. But my mom retired last year, and has become his like risk manager. And he calls me literally every day and is like, I'm making more money than ever because your mom saves me from myself. And it's just like, again,
That's amazing.
I think one of like women as CIOs, investors in general, I think actually women have maybe a higher aversion to risk, which therefore I think makes us better risk managers, right? I think and that flows through to, starting companies and all of these other things that just, I think leads to success. One last data piece that I'll end with, which I think is opportunity. Today, there's a statistic that women control 80+% of purchasing power in their households, and that's only going to increase between now and 2030. Today, in terms of wealth, women control about 11 trillion. By 2030, that number is going to be 30 trillion. So if someone's looking to start a new business or start a fund or think about the ways that people invest and manage money that's out there, just women are just a huge demographic and opportunity. So I think that should, sort of ending on the positive note that Wendy has imbued us with, like, I think this is just such an exciting time to think about investing in all ways in women.
Amazing. Thank you, Rebecca, David, Claude. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.